She's a mess. She's a cognitive mess, and nobody wants to talk about it.
Donald Trump's rallies continue to get crazier and crazier, angrier and angrier, as we can see in that clip right there. And so ridiculous of Donald Trump, complete projection to pretend that Vice President Harris is the one dealing with cognitive decline when it is Donald Trump who that is the case for. And he is obviously incredibly angry that the media is starting to point out and call out his cognitive decline, but it couldn't be any CLE. And it's the reason why we see Donald Trump lose it in his speeches, why he is more extreme than ever and focused on attacks not just against VP Harris, on any other person he considers his political enemy, but now his crowd. We have seen Donald Trump start to yell at his crowd more and more during these speeches, going as far as to threaten them today. And this speech in North Carolina, which can only be described as absolutely ridiculous, and we are going to get into the rest of it. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already, and enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean the world to me. Now let's get into the rest of this crazed speech.
I mean, that's the biggest scandal, in my opinion, because that's election interference. That's the biggest scandal in the history of broadcasting. Right? The biggest scandal in the history of broadcasting, in my opinion. We'll see what happens. They're being sued. They're being sued by a lot of people. No, they should lose their license for that, right? You know, the fake news is protecting them. How dare he say that? Why would he ever say lose it? They took her answer, threw it out, and gave her a new answer, and they're trying to defend it. Boy, can you imagine if that happened with me? It would be over. The electric chair.
We covered this in a video yesterday with J.D. Vance, in which Donald Trump's running mate admitted that any person who wanted to censor free speech or censor the media should not be president, that they are completely unfit. And although I hate to say it, I agree with J.D. Vance. Donald Trump is unfit because he wants to take CBS off the air, and for what? Because Vice President Harris was willing to sit down with him for an interview, and Donald Trump wasn't. And let's set the record straight. CBS always has to cut down their interviews because their interviews are longer than 60 minutes. I know it's contiar to the name Donald, and you can't wrap your head around that concept, but just an out-of-control individual clearly projecting his own insecurity about interviews and clearly projecting his own insecurity with the crazy statements that he's making right here.
I'll tell you what, I was in California. We have some of the biggest crowds you've ever seen. I was in California. I'd love to have God to come down and be the vote counter just for one day and see how well we're doing in California. They send millions and millions of ballots out. They don't know what the hell's happening. And no matter what happens, they say, well, California is not available. I have a rally, I have 100,000 people. They have a rally, they have 200 people. And they say they're going to win. They're not going to win. No.
It is important that we point out that when Donald Trump says something like if Jesus or God or whomever counted the votes, he always says someone from up high came down. It's not just crazy. Donald Trump, we can't just laugh at it and call him ridiculous. We have to point out the doubt that he is trying to sow about the upcoming election, because that is Donald Trump's plan. Him and his staff know that there's a very good chance at this point that he does not win this election with votes, and that doesn't seem like the plan of how they want to win it. They want to win it by attacking our democracy. They want to win it by intimidating election officials. And so if they can cast enough doubt about this election, they have a better chance to do that. So we have to call it out. Just like we have to call out what he said right here.
He's going to stop the cheating. How are you doing? Are they cheating, Michael? They're trying, but are they? They're not going to get away with it, right? He said. No. That's why I had him. They didn't get away with it in this day. They got away with it in plenty of places. This will be America.
once again attempting to sow doubt about the results of the upcoming election. And we have seen Donald Trump and the rest of his stooges talk about democracy in a very specific way lately, when they're saying the biggest threat to democracy is not having the results on election night again, because they want to cast out about the results on that night and going forward. And Republicans are the ones who are doing everything they possibly can to try to slow the counting of votes again, so they can pretend that the process was illegitimate. And we have to continue to call that out, because if we don't, it will only lead to a worse attack on democracy than we saw in 2020 and on January 6th, because Donald Trump is more unhinged, like I said earlier, yelling at and threatening his crowd with, which a little bit of we can see right here.
It's great until it blows up, in which case you're not recognizable. Even guys, strong guys like this, they'd call you mom or your wife. Is it a mom or a, oh, look at that. Oh, I know them. Very wealthy parents. That's nice, you know. I know them. No, your kids wouldn't be recognizable. That's not a good thought, huh? How's my son doing? Well, he tried the new hydrogen car. It didn't work out too well.
What an interesting choice to pick out one of your supporters on the crowd and say if her son blew up in a hydrogen car, she wouldn't recognize him. And what is this bit that he's on lately? I know Donald Trump likes to talk about energy and do his baby drill bit without actually explaining how he would cut energy cost or actually explaining what the implication for economic prosperity would be. He can never really bridge those two ideas, but someone blowing up in a car, he continues to go back to this point. I think he just likes the imagery of it in the same way. He likes the imagery of the fear-mongering he pushes, and we saw more of those threats now because he's not just talking about immigration in an angry way. He's now threatening his crowd, as we can see here.
Brought in from the Congo. The great thing is they make our criminals look like really nice people. These people are so much more vicious. They'd cut you up and they don't even think about it the next day. Look at these beautiful ladies these ladies in the front are going, Jesus, this is a rather depressing speech he's making, I must say. They say, look how beautiful, I happen to know them. They're not into the world of being cut up, right? They never heard that. They weren't educated exactly that way. Look, they're looking at me, they're so cute. They're saying, oh, this is terrible. Believe me, they're worse than that. That's how bad they are.
Threatening that if you are not elected president, we are going to see women be cut up, and they don't want to be in the business of being cut up. If you're not elected is some pretty egregious and intense fear-mongering. And as medical professionals have described the state, the cognitive state that Donald Trump is in. And anyone who is deteriorating like him, individuals like that, can only think in extremes, can only think in the most outlandish scenarios. And so that's what we see from Donald Trump. Of course, he is incredibly desperate at this point. So he wants to push the most insane and most outlandish agenda and most outlandish fear-mongering. And so that's what he's doing. But it just describes how out of it he is. And I think it's important that we continue to center that message that he's lost it, as we can see right here.
I've just come from Western North Carolina, where I witnessed the terrible devastation of Hurricane Helene. Boy, that is some devastation. You look at nature. It's called nature. They have houses. They're beautiful, big, strong, powerful houses. And they just wiped out, they're gone. The footings are gone. The foundations, everything's gone. It's unbelievable when you look at it.
Does that sound like a sane individual to you? Does that sound like someone who should be in charge of the nuclear codes? It's called nature. What else would it be called? What is the vocabulary of Donald Trump come to? At this point, I know there have been studies of how his speaking ability continues to fall grade level by grade level. I think we're at a third grade vocabulary at this point for Donald Trump. But this is just a person who is clearly out of it and clearly unfit to do anything. And it's almost sad to see if the focus wasn't really just on how dangerous it was, how insane it was. And speaking of which, that is exactly what Jessica Taroff called out Donald Trump for in this clip right here.
They're shattering the rules all around the way this government works. I mean, and I think Donald Trump to go, listen, let's get back to normalcy. Let's get back to actually respecting each other.
How big Arnold Palmer was? Are you kidding me, Sean?
Wait, listen, we're talking about how the...
No. You tell me if Joe Biden had stood up there and said, you know, I saw Arnold Palmer in a shower once, and boy, that guy's got it going on down there. What would you have said? That he wasn't fit to lead?
That doesn't affect the way the government works, the way the government functions.
That you have an insane person as the head of the government? And when you say we shatter the norms, maybe the guy who got indicted is the one that shattered the norms.
Maybe it's the lawfare that was used to indict him on bogus charges.
Just real quickly.
If we want to get back to normal state, it requires removing Donald Trump from our political environment. It requires booting them out at the ballot box. That's what we need to do. And I always talk about how Vice President Harris's success with Republicans, whether they be lifelong Republicans or soft Republicans who, just identify with the party isn't great just for the purpose of winning this election. But it's important in the unity that it brings when we have someone like Dick and Liz, trainee Adam Kinninger coming together to support VP Harris. It means we're unifying around an issue in this country that is the issue of democracy. And it's also the issue of sanity, wanting to be able to have actual conversations without the hyperbole and really just anger of MAGA and their crazy nature, their cult-like nature. Speaking of cults, listen to what Donald Trump says is cultists are saying about him.
I'm the greatest president there's ever been. I said, what about George Washington? Nah, you're better. What about Lincoln? What about Abraham Lincoln? Nope, you're better. They said I'm tougher on the border than Abraham Lincoln, right? Than Honest Abe. But
Now, there are one or two ways that this could have gone. Either Donald Trump is reading Truth Social and all the praise by his cultist of him on it. And they are saying that he's better than Lincoln, or he's doing his... Many people are saying, quite frankly, they're calling me Lincoln. Sorry for doing the Trump voice. But we have to bust it out once in a while. Who's calling you better than Lincoln? Besides, of course, I don't know you. I guess maybe Carrie Lake. She's trying to buy some MAGA points. I don't know. But this is clearly an unstable individual. Clearly, someone who shouldn't be president. Clearly, someone we have to call out, and we're going to every single day on this show. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button. You can leave a like on this video. And if you're stuck around at the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.